Hello there ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the level 100 Protection Paladin guide. My name is Tuskeh, and in this video we will be discussing the Protection Paladin in all of its glory, covering everything. This guide, designed for everyone, will help you regardless of whether you're a new player, an experienced paladin, or a veteran player. We'll be covering the basic concepts of the class and the specialization, and then going into increasing depth to provide more experienced players with advice as to how to master their paladin. Just as a note, this guide is designed for PvE, not for PvP, so don't expect any words of advice when it comes to player versus player combat. You can use the links at the top of the video to jump between the various sections of this guide at will. Make sure you have annotations enabled to allow you to do this. Now, let's get started. The Protection Paladin is the holy protector of the Paladin specializations. Utilizing thick plate armor, a one-handed weapon, and a towering shield, the Protection Paladin bolsters their defenses with the power of the light to fight their enemies and protect their allies. Serving as a tank, the Protection Paladin has a variety of abilities dedicated to improving their own survivability, with capabilities ranging from weakening or stunning enemies, reducing the damage they take, saving themselves from near death, or even healing themselves to full health. The Protection Paladin is remarkably difficult to kill. In addition to this, the Protection Paladin has a variety of spells that allow them to save lives, be it taunting an enemy about to destroy an ally, stunning enemies, or using their powerful hand abilities to protect allies from physical damage, granting them immunity to slows, removing all of their threat, or even taking damage for them. Any Paladin can provide a huge amount of utility to their teammates, and a Protection Paladin is more than suited to saving their allies using their toolkit of powerful abilities. As a Protection Paladin, you can bring either Mastery or Stats to your group or raid using your Blessing of Might or Blessing of Kings respectively. You will be generating Holy Power, a 5-point resource, using some of your abilities, and then spending Holy Power to actively mitigate damage or heal yourself with other abilities. You have a variety of powerful spells for dealing damage either to a single target or to multiple enemies, allowing you to quickly gather them up so that they're attacking you rather than your allies. You're also one of the toughest classes in the game. Not only are you a tank, meaning that your health, armor, and avoidance will all be higher than the other roles, but you have a suite of damage reduction and healing spells that allow you to survive hits that would annihilate other classes. And through careful use of these spells, you can even survive things that you're not really supposed to survive. This toolkit of survivability, damage, and utility spells allows you to handle just about any situation that World of Warcraft can throw at you. So just what spells will you be using as a Protection Paladin? Well, your very basic spells, the ones that you will be using the most, are your Holy Power generators. These don't cost enough mana to be significant in any kind of way, so their only limiting factor is their short cooldowns. You have Crusader Strike, which deals damage to a single target and grants 1 Holy Power. You have Hammer of the Righteous, which deals a smaller amount of damage around your target, and grants 1 Holy Power. You have Judgment, which deals damage at range and grants 1 Holy Power. And you have Holy Wrath, which deals high damage split evenly among all enemies around you, and stuns any demons or undead hit by it. If you're against one enemy, it will deal a huge amount of damage, and if you're surrounded by multiple enemies, it will deal lower damage to all of them. This one doesn't generate Holy Power, but should be considered part of your rotation, and if you choose a particular talent, this will generate Holy Power. These Holy Power generators allow you to store Holy Power up to 5. You have 2 main ways of spending that Holy Power. First is Word of Glory, which consumes up to 3 Holy Power to heal a target, with the power of the spell increasing depending on how much Holy Power you use to spend it. It can only spend up to 3. This is useful to use on yourself when you are taking damage. Your other Holy Power spender is Shield of the Righteous, which consumes 3 Holy Power to deal damage to a single target. This also reduces the physical damage you take by 25% for 3 seconds. When you use Shield of the Righteous, you also gain a stack of a buff called Bastion of Glory. For each stack of this buff, your Word of Glory will heal you, and only you, for more. This stacks up to 5. This means that you'll generally be using Shield of the Righteous as much as you can to reduce the physical damage that you take, and then, once you have 5 stacks of Bastion of Glory, weaving in a single Word of Glory for a huge heal. Added on top of this is Avenger's Shield. This is a ranged attack that deals high damage to multiple enemies and silences its primary target. This does not generate Holy Power, but interacts with one of your passive tanking abilities. You see, whenever you avoid a melee attack, so you either parry or dodge it, or whenever you use Crusader Strike or Hammer of the Righteous, you have a chance to activate Grand Crusader. This makes Avenger's Shield reset its cooldown, and if it is used within 6 seconds, grant 1 holy power. This means that you want to watch out for procs of Grand Crusader while fighting, and the chance for this to activate increases depending on how many enemies you're fighting at once. So those are your basic spells, but the Protection Paladin also has a variety of cooldowns available to them to dramatically reduce the damage they take and increase their survivability. You have Divine Protection, which is a 1-minute cooldown that decreases the damage you take from magical attacks by 40% for 8 seconds. This can be glyphed to also reduce physical damage at the cost of lowering its magical damage reduction. You have Ardent Defender, which is a 3-minute cooldown spell that reduces all damage you take for 10 seconds. During these 10 seconds, if an attack hits you that would kill you, you will instead be healed for 12% of your maximum health. This spell can easily save your life. You have Guardian of Ancient Kings, which is a 3-minute cooldown that summons an untargetable Guardian of Ancient Kings. This Guardian cannot be commanded or controlled in any kind of way. All it does is channel a 50% damage reduction onto you for 8 seconds. This is a huge amount of damage reduction and is really powerful. You have Lay on Hands, which is a 10-minute cooldown spell that heals a target for 100% of your maximum health. This can be used on yourself, instantly topping your health up to full. This is remarkably powerful, and as a result, causes Forbearance for 60 seconds, which is a debuff that prevents the recipient of the spell from being affected by Lay on Hands, Divine Shield, or Hand of Protection during that period. And finally, you have Divine Shield. This is the staple Paladin protection spell. This protects you from all damage for 8 seconds, making you completely immune. It also reduces the damage you deal by 50% during that time. It causes Forbearance, and more importantly, if enemies are attacking you and you go immune, they will change their targets. As a Protection Paladin, this spell is for emergencies only. When it's either you or the enemy you're fighting, it is the last tool at your disposal. Be very careful with it. As a Protection Paladin, you have a suite of hand spells that can target you or an ally, normally allies, and aid them in some kind of way. Your hand spells are Hand of Freedom, which grants a target immunity to movement impairing effects for 6 seconds. Hand of Salvation, which removes all threat from a friendly target for 10 seconds, meaning that enemies won't attack them if there is someone else that they could be attacking. Once the duration of this hand spell ends, their threat will return. Hand of Sacrifice, which transfers 30% of the damage an ally takes to yourself. And finally, Hand of Protection, which grants a target immunity to all physical attacks for 10 seconds. During this 10 seconds, they can't attack or use physical abilities, but they can still cast spells. This causes Forbearance and causes them to lose all threat on any enemies they're fighting. So if you use this on yourself, the enemies will run off to fight anyone else they're in combat with, so be careful. Next up, you have a passive mechanic called Seals. These are spells that are applied to you at all times, providing a benefit. They are activated manually, but remain on until you switch them. You can only have one of them active at a time. You can pick between Seal of Insight, which increases the healing you receive by 5%, and gives your melee attacks a chance to heal you for a small amount, or Seal of Righteousness, which causes your melee attacks to deal damage to all enemies within 8 yards. Finally, as a Protection Paladin, you have a few other spells that you'll want to be using whenever it's viable to do so. You have Cleanse, which removes all poison and disease effects on a target. This can be used on yourself. You have Consecration, which deals damage over time to enemies near you. This is great when all of your other spells are on cooldown. You have Hammer of Justice, which stuns a single enemy for 6 seconds. You have Flash of Light, a casted spell that heals a target. You have Hammer of Wrath, which deals high damage to an enemy with 20% or less health. You have Rebuke, which allows you to interrupt an enemy's spell cast, locking them out of that spell school for a few seconds. You have Reckoning, which taunts a target into attacking you and increases the threat that you generate against them for 3 seconds. This is used to immediately force enemies to attack you rather than someone else. You have Redemption, which allows you to resurrect a dead player out of combat. You have Turn Evil, a casted spell that causes a targeted undead, demon, or aberration to become disoriented for 40 seconds. Damaging the target will break Turn Evil, and only one target can be turned at a time. Last but not least, you have 3 passive effects to know about. Heart of the Crusader, which increases your mount speed. Shining Protector, which causes healing spells to have 2 chances to heal you again, depending on your own multi-strike chance. And Resolve, which is a tank-only passive that increases your self-healing depending on how much damage you have received in the last 10 seconds. Resolve's power is dictated by how much damage you would take before avoidance or mitigation, not by how much damage you actually take after avoidance and mitigation spells have been taken into account. Those are the Protection Paladin spells. They all have their place, and it's important that you keep them all in mind so that you can whip out the right spell at the right time. So let's go over the various things that have changed between level 90 and level 100 for the Protection Paladin. You have a variety of new enhancements, so let's quickly go over them, how important they are, and how they change things. Unfortunately, this isn't remarkable for the Protection Paladin. You have Improved Block, which increases the amount blocked by your shield by an additional 10%. This is just an increase to your survivability. You have Improved Consecration, which increases the damage it deals by 50%. This makes it more useful for dealing damage to multiple targets, and makes it part of your rotation in most situations. You have Improved Forbearance, which reduces the duration of Forbearance by 30 seconds. This applies to Divine Shield, Lay on Hands, and Hand of Protection, and applies to both you and any target you apply Forbearance to. Finally, you have Empowered Avenger's Shield, which makes the spell hit an additional 2 targets. This is great for dealing with multiple enemies, and makes Avenger's Shield even better for initiating a fight against a group of enemies. Let's talk basic gearing now. First and foremost, as a paladin, you wear plate armor and you gain a 5% stamina bonus for doing so. Cloth, leather, and mail are a no-go, and you should not wear them. A slightly better piece of gear does not make up for the loss of 5% of your primary stat, along with the armor that a piece of plate would come with. As you would expect, as a paladin you use a one-handed weapon and a shield. The only one-handed weapon you cannot use is a fist weapon. Now, before we get into your stat priorities, it's important to remember that reforging, a system that dominated Mr. Pandaria's gear, is no longer in the game, and as such you can only customize your gear with gems and enchants. Additionally, a new gear system has been put into place. All primary pieces of gear that show up on your character, so head, shoulders, chest, wrist, gloves, belt, leggings, and boots, all share stats with other specs and classes, and changes depending on who wears them. So, a pair of plate boots would offer you strength if you were in your protection spec, but the same pair of plate boots would offer a holy paladin intellect instead. Don't worry about the grayed out intellect bonus you see on your gear, you are still gearing correctly. Additionally, it's important to note that you cannot gain dodge, parry, or block rating from gear anymore. This passive mitigation is no longer available to increase by gear, and as such you can only increase your parry, block, or dodge chance by using active mitigation abilities. The rest of your gear, so necklace, cloak, weapons, rings, and trinkets do not change, although sometimes the cloak does. It's a little bit weird, and as such will require that you know what stats you are after. So your primary stats are stamina and strength. However, you don't need to gem or enchant your gear with this. You can't, actually, and you really don't need to worry about focusing on it at all. As long as you pick up things with strength on them, which as discussed earlier is easy for most pieces of gear, you should be good. Just try to get as much stamina as you can when you're starting out, as it will make you more survivable in many different ways. Your next most important stat is bonus armor. This tank-specific stat increases your armor, which reduces the damage you take from all physical attacks, and additionally increases your attack power. This only appears on rings, necklaces, cloaks, and trinkets. This is a fantastic stat, and since it's only available on some slots, you'll want to prioritize bonus armor whenever it pops up. Your next most important stat is haste. This is an indirect increase to your survivability, as thanks to your Sanctity of Battle passive, it causes haste to lower the cooldown and global cooldown of Judgment, Crusader Strike, Hammer of the Righteous, Consecration, Holy Wrath, Avenger's Shield, Shield of the Righteous, and Hammer of Wrath. So, the more haste you have, the more you can generate Holy Power, and the more you can use Shield of the Righteous, the more you can maintain the buff from Shield of the Righteous, the more survivable you are. Next up is Mastery. This is called Divine Bulwark, which increases the damage reduction of Shield of the Righteous, adds power to Bastion of Glory, increases your chance to block melee attacks, and increases your attack power. This just makes you stronger in loads of different ways and is a very good stat. Next up is Critical Strike. This increases your damage and healing, and thanks to Riposte, a tank-only passive that grants you a parry chance equal to your Critical Strike chance from gear, this increases your survivability. Versatility is next, and it increases all of your damage and healing done, and decreases all damage you take. It's not a bad stat, but it's not nearly as potent as the other stats on this list. Except for Multi-Strike. This gives your spells a chance to trigger additional hits, which increases your damage, healing, and absorbs. Shining Protector, your passive ability that increases the healing you receive by multi-striking heals that hit you, is okay, but it's not as strong as the rest of the stats on this list. When it comes to gemming your gear, you'll be doing this a lot less than you did before. Sockets are now a very rare bonus that you can get on gear, and every socket is always prismatic, meaning that there are no socket bonuses and any color gem can be inserted into any kind of slot. As such, when you have a gem socket, you should always use a Greater Haste Talidite, which is an expensive gem that increases your haste. However, should you find yourself with a gem slot in a weaker piece of gear, try just using a Haste Talidite, which is a weaker and cheaper version of the Greater Haste Talidite. Next, Enchants. Again, they are very few and far between in Warlords of Draenor, and each of these is extremely expensive if you want to buy them from the auction house. As such, I'd only suggest enchanting your gear if you know you'll be keeping it for a while. Things like raid drops are the perfect example of what you want to enchant, and of course, you do need to enchant your gear because the stat bonuses are very important. The enchants you should be using are, for your necklace, Gift of Haste. For your cloak, Gift of Haste. For your rings, Gift of Haste. Make sure you get one of these on your item level 680 epic ring as soon as you can. And for your weapon, Mark of Blackrock. This grants you a chance to increase your bonus armor, but only when you're below 60% health. This is just an increase to your survivability in general. You don't need to control it, and you don't need to try and activate it. It will just help you. Now, let's talk talents and glyphs. It's important to note that these suggestions are just that. Suggestions. The nature of talents and glyphs encourage swapping on a fight-per-fight basis, so make sure you have a stack of Tomes of the Clear Mind on you, so that you can swap talents and glyphs out whenever it will be beneficial to you. Tier 1. Movement. Speed of Light is an active ability that increases your movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds, with a 45-second cooldown. This is a reliable burst of movement speed that doesn't require an enemy or holy power, like the other talents do. This is great for running dungeons, for instance, as you can constantly speed through empty corridors and open areas. Next up, Long Arm of the Law, which causes your judgment spell to increase your movement speed by 45% for 3 seconds. This is more frequent than Speed of Light, but requires you to be fighting an enemy. This can be good in long fights with lots of movement in them. Finally, Pursuit of Justice, which is a passive 15% increase to your movement speed, plus an additional 5% for each charge of Holy Power, up to 3, and an additional 15% movement speed. If you're often moving out of bad stuff, the passive movement speed can be really helpful. But you shouldn't pull Holy Power just for this bonus, as it will decrease your survivability. My pick of this tier is Speed of Light, as it allows you to move really fast on demand, which I find infinitely useful. However, the fight you're in and your own playstyle can dictate this tier more than anything else. Go with what you're comfortable with. Second tier, Crowd Control. Fist of Justice replaces Hammer of Justice, halves its cooldown and increases its range to 20 yards. This is great when an enemy is stunnable, and it dramatically reduces the damage you take from that enemy during the stun, because they're not doing anything. Next up, Repentance, which puts the target demon, dragonkin, giant, humanoid or undead to sleep for 1 minute. As with all major CC abilities, this breaks when the target takes damage and can only affect one enemy at a time. This is just a crowd control ability, and it's not too bad. If you really need that extra CC, consider picking this up. Finally, Blinding Light is a new ability that immediately disorients all enemies within 10 yards for 6 seconds, with a 2-minute cooldown. Damage taken breaks the disorient, but even if it is instantly broken, which is likely, enemies will be momentarily disoriented. As such, this can be really great for mass interrupting enemies that are all casting spells. My pick of this tier is Fist of Justice, as it allows you to control enemies far away from you, such as if an add appears and it's causing trouble for your group, or if an enemy has enraged and is very dangerous. Try and stun as much as you can with this spell. Tier 3, Healing. Selfless Healer causes your judgments to reduce the cast time and mana cost of your next Flash of Light by 35%, and increases its effectiveness on other players by 20%, stacking up to 3 times. This is good for healing others, but doesn't provide too much for yourself. Eternal Flame replaces Word of Glory and works the same way, consuming up to 3 holy power for a heal. However, it also places a heal over time on the target, lasting for up to 30 seconds depending on how much holy power you spent. When used on yourself, the heal over time's power is tripled. This is good for constant healing on yourself, but the healing can often go to waste if you time it wrong. Finally, Sacred Shield, which places a 30-second buff on a target, but can only be placed on one target at a time. Every 6 seconds, this buff creates an absorb shield on the target. The shield being broken or expiring has no effect on the main buff. As long as the buff is up, every 6 seconds you will gain a shield. This is a great survivability spell that you can keep up on yourself at all times. My pick of this tier is definitely Sacred Shield. It's a great amount of absorption and means that you don't have to spend as much holy power healing yourself, and can instead use it on Shield of the Righteous, which increases your survivability. Tier 4, Utility. Hand of Purity gives you a new hand spell, which reduces the damage a friendly target takes by 15% and reduces the damage they take from damage over time abilities by 80% for 6 seconds. This can really help reduce the damage of a very nasty dot on a tank, such as yourself or an off-tank. Unbreakable Spirit reduces the cooldown of Divine Shield, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands by 50%, which gives you access to them more often. This is a big increase to your survivability, as you can use these abilities more often, which means that you'll be able to mitigate damage more often. Finally, Clemency, which gives each of your hand spells 2 charges, each with their own cooldown. This lets you use your hand spells more often, useful in very certain situations. Make sure you keep an eye on whether or not you need to use this. My pick of the tier is, by default, Unbreakable Spirit. This sees the most use in most situations, as more survivability is great in any situation. Clemency and Hand of Purity should be used whenever there'll be a benefit, though. Making people immune to physical damage with more frequent hands of protection can help your team beat a fight, so remember that they exist. Tier 5, Holy Power Abilities. Holy Avenger is an activated ability on a 2-minute cooldown, and causes your abilities that generate holy power to cause 30% additional damage and healing, and to generate 3 charges of holy power instead of only 1, lasting for 18 seconds. This is great for bursts of damage, healing, and survivability. Sanctified Wrath causes your Holy Wrath to generate 1 holy power, and to deal double damage. This makes Holy Wrath part of your rotation, and increases your survivability by giving you more means of generating holy power for Shield of the Righteous. Divine Purpose is a passive ability that is a proc. This causes your Word of Glory and Shield of the Righteous to have a 25% chance to cause your next Word of Glory or Shield of the Righteous to consume no holy power, but cast as if it were 3 consumed. This can be very random, but can dramatically increase your survivability as the procs can often chain off of one another. All three of these talents are good picks, and your choice really depends upon your playstyle. Holy Avenger is great if you want more control over your survivability bursts. Divine Purpose is very random, but experienced players can use it to fill gaps in their Shield of the Righteous buff. And Sanctified Wrath makes Holy Wrath your top priority, and that is my pick of the tier. I love having the extra means with which to generate holy power. It's just great in pretty much any situation. Tier 6, a new ability that deals damage and healing in different ways. Holy Prism causes you to shoot a beam of light at a target. If it's an enemy, they take damage and send out a wave of healing for 5 of your allies within 15 yards. If it's an ally, they are healed and then deal damage to 5 enemies within 15 yards. Note that the damage and healing comes from you, meaning that this can be used to pick up enemies nice and fast. Light's Hammer throws a hammer onto the ground, dealing damage to enemies and healing allies within 10 yards over 14 seconds. This also reduces enemy movement speed. This is great when both your enemies and your allies are gathered up together. Finally, Execution Sentence causes a hammer to fall from the sky over a target. If it's an enemy, it deals damage over 10 seconds, with the damage increasing over time and dealing a final burst of damage. If it's an ally, it heals over 10 seconds, this time bursting at the start and then decreasing in potency over its duration. These are all pretty balanced, but I would say change between Light's Hammer and Execution Sentence depending on what you're doing. For something like a 5-man dungeon, Light's Hammer lets you deal damage to enemies and heal your allies pretty constantly. In a raid, Execution Sentence will be useful to use on a raid boss or on yourself to increase your damage or survivability. Of course, if your raid is stacked up, then Light's Hammer still has value. Holy Prism is pretty good, but it has a short cooldown, and as such becomes part of your rotation, and sometimes you just won't have the time for an extra button. Tier 7 now, the final tier. This one increases your damage and your survivability. Empowered Seals causes your judgment to apply a buff based upon your active seal, lasting for 20 seconds. If you're in Seal of Insight when you use Judgment, this buff will heal you for 2% of your maximum health every 3 seconds. And if you're in Seal of Righteousness when you use Judgment, you gain 20% increased haste for 20 seconds. The most important part of this talent is that these buffs will remain regardless of what seal you're using. So you can perform a feat known as Seal Twisting to keep both buffs active 100% of the time. However, this is an advanced technique, so don't do this if you're a beginner. I really would not recommend it. Seraphim is an active ability that costs 5 holy power, lasts for 15 seconds, and has a 30-second cooldown. This increases your haste, critical strike, mastery, multi-strike, versatility, and bonus armor by 1,000. That is a flat and pretty big increase to your survivability in a lot of different ways, and keeping it up 100% of the time will be a good idea. Although that isn't quite possible, keeping it up as much as you can is good. Finally, Holy Shield is a passive ability great for beginners. This increases your block chance by 15%, allows you to block spells, and deals damage to the attacker whenever you block. This increases your potency both in terms of damage and survivability, making it a great baseline choice, especially if you're a newcomer. So my pick of the tier here largely depends upon what your skill level is. If you're a newcomer, I would suggest Holy Shield until you're comfortable with the rest of your abilities. If you have more confidence, then I suggest Seraphim. Try keeping it up as much as you can, and pooling your holy power so that you can cast it as soon as it comes off of cooldown. This comes at a slight decrease to survivability since you won't be using Shield of the Righteous as much, but still, using a cooldown like Divine Protection during this pooling period will help smooth out the damage. If you're an advanced player, then I suggest Empowered Seals, as this is the most flexible of the 3 talents. Since you can rotate between the 2 seals and maintain 100% uptime on both buffs, you gain an increase to both your DPS and your survivability. The only problem with this is that it takes global cooldowns and focus to do this, and there's a large learning curve associated with getting this right. I thoroughly suggest that you try to keep both buffs up at the same time, and practice doing this on a training dummy until you've got it down in addition to your normal rotation. As for glyphs, there are no mandatory ones for protection, which is great. However, a few notable glyphs are Glyph of Divine Protection, which removes 20% of the spell damage reduction and instead turns it into physical damage reduction, causing the spell to reduce 20% spell damage and 20% physical damage. This is good when you're not taking spell damage constantly. Swap this glyph in and out depending on the fight. Glyph of Consecration makes the spell ranged. This is great for picking up enemies. Glyph of the Consecrator causes Consecrate to move with you, and is great for fights that have a lot of movement. This glyph is exclusive with Glyph of Consecration. Glyph of Holy Wrath, which causes the spell to also stun elementals, dragonkin, and aberrations. It just makes the ability better. Glyph of Burden of Guilt, which causes Judgment to reduce the target's movement speed by 50% for 2 seconds. This is good if you ever need to kite something. Glyph of Judgment, which increases the range of Judgment by 10 yards. This is just very helpful. This glyph is exclusive with Glyph of Burden of Guilt. Glyph of Hand of Sacrifice, which removes the damage transfer component of the spell, meaning that it just reduces the damage taken rather than giving it to you. This makes it much safer to use as a tank. Glyph of Ardent Defender, which removes the damage reduction component, but also makes the spell reduce its cooldown by 60 seconds if it doesn't save your life. Finally, a minor glyph. Glyph of Righteous Retreat. This lets you use your Hearthstone faster if you're inside your Divine Shield. This is called Bubble Hearthing, and is the practice of cowards. Not really. Now, let's move on to your rotation and your usage of cooldowns. Generating and consuming holy power as much as you can is important for your continued survivability, and by combining your powerful survivability cooldowns in with your rotation, you can have bursts of survivability timed to survive nasty parts of fights. Assuming you haven't taken in powered seals, you'll want to use Seal of Insight for the increased survivability that it provides. Additionally, make sure you have Righteous Fury active. You only have to activate this once to gain its effects permanently, even through death, so just double check every now and then to make sure you still have it active. There is nothing more embarrassing than realizing you don't have Righteous Fury active. Your rotation changes depending on how many targets you're facing and upon what talents you have picked, but your basic holy power generating and spending rotation is as such. You want to generate as much holy power as you can, as fast as you can, and as frequently as you can, and then spend it on either Shield of the Righteous or Word of Glory, depending on the situation. Remember that both of these spells are off of the global cooldown, and as such, mesh with your rotation with no issues. So, on a single target, you'll want to use Crusader Strike on cooldown. This is your main priority for generating holy power. Next, you'll want to cast Judgment on cooldown as your second priority. After that, you'll want to use Avenger's Shield. If you ever get a Grand Crusader proc, which causes your next Avenger's Shield to generate holy power if used within 6 seconds, don't prioritize Avenger's Shield above your other holy power generators. 6 seconds is more than enough time to get through those other spells and get them on cooldown, and then use your Avenger's Shield. Bear in mind, this is only the case when on single target. It's important to note that if you have taken Sanctified Wrath, then Holy Wrath inserts into your basic rotation at the number 1 slot, as it deals the most damage and generates 1 holy power. Use it on cooldown before Crusader Strike and Judgment. After you've got your holy power generators on cooldown, you'll have a choice of spells to use as a filler. These just deal damage in some way. They're not normally that important, but they just keep you busy until your holy power generators are ready. You'll want to prioritize your tier 6 talents, so either Execution Sentence, Light's Hammer, or Holy Prism as your number 1 filler priority. After that, use Hammer of Wrath if the enemy's health is below 20%. Your next priority is Consecration. And finally, if you haven't taken Sanctified Wrath, use Holy Wrath as your lowest priority filler spell. This rotation works for 1 or 2 enemies. Once you go up to 3 or more, you'll want to start changing things. When dealing with multiple enemies, Crusader Strike should be replaced with Hammer of the Righteous to deal AoE damage, and Avenger's Shield with the Grand Crusader buff becomes very high priority. When it procs, use it immediately. When fighting multiple enemies, the chance of you getting a Grand Crusader proc increases dramatically, so make sure to consume the buff as quickly as you can to avoid it overlapping and wasting at the proc. When it comes to your filler rotation, for AoE, Consecration becomes a bit better, and you should use it on cooldown with the same priority as your tier 6 talent to deal as much AoE damage as you can. Now that we've discussed your holy power generation, let's talk about spending it. Your first holy power spender is Shield of the Righteous, which consumes 3 holy power to deal damage to an enemy and decrease the physical damage you take for 3 seconds. It also causes Bastion of Glory, a 5-stack buff. Word of Glory is your other holy power spender and consumes up to 3 holy power to heal you. Which one of these you use depends upon the situation. Use Shield of the Righteous preemptively, and Word of Glory reactively. Basically, if you're going to be taking damage and you're at high health, Shield of the Righteous will help reduce it. This can mitigate large, predictable attacks like boss attacks or a group of enemies reaching you. Generally, you'll be using Shield of the Righteous most of the time. Try and maintain the buff that it gives you as much as you can. That said, this is almost impossible, but striving for maximum uptime will give you the most mitigation, especially when you're constantly taking damage. Word of Glory is used to catch up to damage to help your healers. If your health is low because you recently took damage from a spike or your healers are falling behind, Word of Glory can help them out. Although it consumes up to 3 holy power, it is best used on 3, so it can heal the most. However, make sure you actually do use it even on low amounts of holy power, as using it at 1 or 2 and barely surviving is better than dying. Just make sure when you use Word of Glory that it doesn't overheal you, because if you overheal yourself, it's a waste of the holy power. Next, your cooldowns. These are important for your survivability, and ideally you'll want to use as many of these as you can, as often as you can. Timing them to boss abilities works really well, as it lets you smoothen the damage you take, which makes you easier to heal, which means you'll be much less likely to die. Guardian of Ancient Kings is a 50% damage reduction for 8 seconds with a 3-minute cooldown. It's a hugely powerful cooldown and should be considered your biggest one. Use this at least twice on a fight to help smoothen out the damage. Big bursts of damage such as Gruul's Inferno Slice are the best time to use cooldowns like this. Ardent Defender is your next most powerful defensive ability, with a 3-minute cooldown. Reducing all damage taken by 20% for 10 seconds, this also allows you to cheat death by turning the next killing blow on you into a heal. Use this to save your life. If your health is low, Ardent Defender can help your healers restabilize you, with both the damage reduction and the cheat death mechanic making you much harder to kill. Using this on deadly boss mechanics can also be a great idea, because it just lets you live through something that should kill you. Divine Protection is next, and it provides you with either a 40% magic damage reduction, or a 20% magic damage and 20% physical damage reduction if glyphed, and lasts for 8 seconds. With a short 60-second cooldown reduced to 30 seconds if you're using the Unbreakable Spirit talent, this ability will be used very frequently. Make sure you use it as much as you can to help smoothen the damage. I like saying that word, smoothen the damage out, that's what the tanking is all about. Not using Divine Protection often is a big mistake, don't leave it on cooldown. Use it to constantly smooth the damage you take in between downtime on your Shield of the Righteous. Lay on Hands is your oh shit button. This heals you for all of your health with a 5-minute cooldown. This can be used twice in a fight, but don't try to create a situation where Lay on Hands is useful. This is your emergency button, don't try and make a situation where you're going to use it. Just hammer it when you're about to die, when things are going wrong, and you can easily save your own life or the life of one of your raid members. Generally, it's a good idea to save this for yourself, as you'll be taking constant damage and tank deaths normally spell the end of an attempt. Just remember that this activates Forbearance for 30 seconds. And finally, Divine Shield, the Bubble. This is the most powerful immunity in the game, but be warned, if there is anyone else that enemies could attack when you use an immunity, they will attack them instead. You will lose aggro if you use this ability. This is the last spell at your disposal, the Lose Aggro or Lose Your Life spell. A good way to use this ability is to macro it to a CancelAura using the macro you can see on screen now. You can find it in the description as well for easy copy pasting, and we'll cover clever uses of Divine Shield in the advanced section. Now, before we move on, let's discuss your talents and how they mesh with your rotation and cooldown usage. First up, movement abilities. These are best used when you have to get somewhere quickly. Speed of Light is great for pulling enemies, for instance, because you can just charge in, activate Speed of Light, and bam, you're in their faces nice and fast. Make sure you use these movement abilities as much as you possibly can. If you've chosen Eternal Flame, then keep the heal over time buff active on yourself as much as you possibly can. Refresh it just before it expires with as many stacks of Bastion of Glory as possible. Ideally, you would have a constant 5-stack Eternal Flame hot on you. If you have Selfless Healer, then use Flash of Light on yourself or someone else whenever you have 3 stacks of the buff. Next, Sacred Shield becomes part of your standard rotation. Make sure you keep its 30-second long buff up at all times to increase your survivability. Keep an eye on its duration and never let it fall off, ever. Holy Avenger should be used when there are big bursts of damage coming up, either from you or to you. Tank damage is actually pretty decent, and the extra damage can help clinch certain parts of a fight. Additionally, since this spell makes you generate tons of holy power, make sure you use it to create a super long Shield of the Righteous buff to dramatically increase your survivability. Make sure you don't waste holy power when you use Holy Avenger. If you have Divine Purpose instead, then make sure you track the proc and use it nice and fast, either on your Shield of the Righteous or Word of Glory. Make sure you use Holy Prism, Light's Hammer, or Execution Sentence whenever you can. They are generally filler spells, but they can see use in some situations. Holy Prism is great for snap threat, Light's Hammer is great when your allies and enemies are stacked up close together, and Execution Sentence is really good to use on cooldown for single target fights. Using it on yourself provides lots of healing, and using it on the enemy grants you substantial damage and threat. Seraphim should be kept up as much as possible. You can at most maintain a 50% uptime on the buff because of the cooldown, so aim to pull 5 holy power shortly before the cooldown of Seraphim expires, and use something like Divine Protection to smooth the damage you take while pulling the holy power, since you won't be using Shield of the Righteous or Word of Glory during that time. Again, smoothen the damage out. Finally, empowered seals. We'll discuss more about what's called seal twisting in the advanced section, but remember that to get the most out of this talent, you'll want to keep a 100% uptime on both of the buffs it provides. Uther's Insight for Seal of Insight, and Liadrin's Righteousness for Seal of Righteousness. Compared to something like Holy Shield, seal twisting grants you a little bit more DPS and survivability, so consider seal twisting if you're an advanced player that wants to get more out of their Protection Paladin. However, for a beginner, something like Holy Shield is perfectly fine in comparison. It isn't going to get you killed. Next, let's discuss some useful macros and add-ons. These aren't necessary to master your paladin, but they are very helpful and I would definitely suggest them. Macros first. There are only a couple of these I use, but they can be actually really helpful. First of all, a Divine Shield CancelAura macro. I recently mentioned this, but I just want to go into a bit more detail about it. This causes you to cast Divine Shield, and then if pressed again, it will cancel Divine Shield. Despite the way it looks like it's worded, it will not instantly cast it then remove it. You'll have to actually press it twice if you want to cast it and then remove it. This lets you pull off a little trick with Divine Shield. If you hit this button twice in rapid succession, then you will Divine Shield and immediately cancel it. If you then hit the enemy you're fighting, taunting a boss right before Divine Shield works great for this, they won't actually go anywhere. This combo is great for clearing nasty debuffs on yourself, and this macro can replace your Divine Shield key binding, as it can be used for both Divine Shielding yourself and for cancelling it. Another macro that you can use is a CancelAura for Hand of Protection. This is really simple, and if you have room to keybind it, it can be used to cancel a Hand of Protection from yourself or another paladin. Just like Divine Shield, you will lose threat if you have Hand of Protection placed on you, so having some kind of way to remove it nice and fast can be very helpful. Those are the only macros that I use for paladining, but there are a variety of mouse over macros that you can use to enhance your utility. A mouse over macro allows you to mouse over a target, like say a raid or party member, and then cast a spell on them without actually having to switch targets. To create a mouse over macro, just type in /cast space open bracket target equals mouse over close bracket space then the name of the spell. Spells I suggest creating mouse over macros for are Hand of Protection, Hand of Salvation, Hand of Freedom, Hand of Sacrifice, Hand of Purity, Lay on Hands, and Cleanse. There's a lot of hands there. You can find more information about mouse over macros in my macros guide, available in the description or by clicking the link on screen now. Don't worry, it won't close this video, it will open in a separate tab. As far as add-ons go, there are only a few that I suggest, and they all have to do with information. First of all, get yourself a boss mod. Either Deadly Boss mods or Bigwigs. Either of these will give you information about boss abilities, when they're coming in, when the other tank has a certain number of debuffs, etc. It's just great for raiding in general. Most raid groups will make something like this mandatory, so just get one, it will give you loads of information, and information is power, especially as a tank. Another great add-on that I suggest is Weak Auras. This add-on lets you create icons, timers, and effects for just about anything you can dream of. Tracking Sacred Shield, creating a Holy Power indicator, tracking the duration of your Shield of the Righteous, the cooldown of Seraphim, and anything else you can think of. You can use this add-on to give you information about anything. The only downside is that it's very complicated. But I have created a guide for it. You can find my Weak Auras guide by hitting the link on screen now, or by finding it in the description of this video. Don't you worry, it won't close this guide, it will open in a new tab. Next, a good raid frame add-on will help you target your allies, see your buffs on them, and track debuffs. The default Blizzard frames work fine for this, but if you want to use an add-on, then I suggest Voodoo. You can find information about this add-on in my basic UI guide, which you can again find on screen now or in the description. It will open in a new tab. Next, a miscellaneous add-on that will aid you with marking targets, Opie. This allows you to create pie-like menus that appear around your cursor with a keybind. This is fantastic for marking enemies on the fly, which is something you'll have to do as a tank. Finally, a good nameplate add-on will let you target enemies, see what they're casting, and whether or not you have aggro on them. I suggest tidy plates for this. You can find a link to my guide on how to set it up as part of my advanced UI guide, which you can find on screen now or as a link in the description. Once more, it will open in a new tab. Now let's discuss your mentality as a tank. This is crucially important, as having the right mentality will dictate how well you do as a tank. And tanks can make or break a raid team, so make sure you know what you're doing. If you want to learn more about tanking mentality, then I suggest you take a look at my tanking mentality guide, available in the description or on screen now. Once again, this video will open in a separate tab and will not close this one. So what do you need to do in order to become a great tank? Well, before you start thinking about being a tank, you need to make sure that you have your rotation down. Make it muscle memory, make sure you're comfortable with your holy power generators and spenders. Practice your rotation, and make sure you know how to use your cooldowns. Make sure everything is nice and comfortable before moving on. Now, it's important to note that as a tank, you are the leader of your group or raid, regardless of who has a crown above their unit frame. You're the one pulling, you're the one controlling the fight, you're the one deciding where everyone moves by the way you move the boss. Your role is to tank enemies by maintaining aggro on them, keeping yourself alive, reacting to situations, and making life easier for everyone in your raid. Let's break those down, shall we? Let's start by maintaining aggro on enemies. This might seem really simple, but this is much more than just using your abilities to hold threat. You have to think about what you can and can't tank, or what you should and shouldn't be tanking. Some enemies actually aren't tankable, and if you try to tank them, you might die. If you're in a raid with another tank, charging in and trying to keep aggro on multiple enemies is not the best idea, as the damage is being poured onto you and not both you and the other tank, which would reduce the damage you both take by splitting the enemies up. Think about how enemies work, what their mechanics are, and how that means you will be tanking them. Knowing what to expect ahead of time is really important, because Blizzard has a habit of screwing with your expectations. Sometimes you may encounter a mob that you can't tank. Just do what you can to control it in that situation, but don't try and tank it, or you might just die. Next, think about how you're actually going to keep yourself alive. Being able to survive enemy abilities is vital to your role as a tank, and although you will be relying on your healers to help heal you up, think about everything you can do to mitigate damage. This may be using your cooldowns at certain points. Try and find the parts of the fight where the tank damage spikes up, and then use your damage reduction spells to reduce those spikes so that they're more manageable for your healers. Or maybe it's adapting to fight mechanics and avoiding damage altogether. Take the fight against Arachnath in Skyreach as an example. He will repeatedly use Smash to deal damage to the tank, and normally the healer just heals it up. But did you know that the damage is entirely avoidable by stepping to the side? All you have to do is see which arm is being raised and move either left or right. Just do a quick sidestep and you can completely avoid the damage. Think about how you can best mitigate damage like this. A lot of damage won't be avoidable, but some of it will be. It's important that you avoid as much damage as you possibly can, as it will make your life significantly easier. Next is reacting to situations. This is a hugely important aspect of being a tank. Being able to read a situation, react accordingly, and being able to think ahead are very important to being successful. The key to being a fantastic tank is situational awareness. This is an awareness of what's going on around you, and more importantly, what is going to be going on around you in the future. This is important for all classes, but doubly so for tanks. Think about what situation you're in right now. Are you taking heavy damage? If so, think about what cooldowns can help you survive. Are enemies casting spells? How can you interrupt or stun them to stop them? Are enemies on their way? How can you best pick them up so that they're attacking you and not anyone else? These are examples of how you should be thinking in the moment. But thinking ahead is also important. Am I going to be taking heavy damage in the future? If so, what cooldowns should I be saving for that point? Are enemies going to be casting spells? What spells will they be casting? Is there one that's super important, like a heal? How am I going to handle it? With a stun, with an interrupt, or just by killing the enemy nice and fast? You can preempt some casters by just marking them with a skull and having the entire group kill them fast. Are enemies going to be heading towards you soon? How can you move so that they're not a problem? Should you move to them and attack them before they attack the healer, or should you try and avoid them? How will that affect the damage you take? Things like that are examples of thinking ahead. Make sure you do this as much as you can, because reacting to things is fine. For instance, if someone accidentally pulls a pack in a dungeon, you can either react to it and maybe someone dies, you can not react to it at all, in which case everyone dies, which is a terrible shame, or you can think ahead and see, that person is moving. He might pull. Oh, he just did. I'm ready. And you're moving forwards and you're ready, and no one dies. Think ahead. Finally, make life easier for your raid. How? Well, think about things like boss positioning. Keeping enemies still for as long as possible is important for the melee DPS, who will get hurt by having to move. Think about how the boss is faced and if anyone is in danger of being hit by frontal cone attacks. Combine this with your situational awareness. Is how you're facing the boss dangerous to anyone? How can you make things easier for your raid team? How can you make things easier for your raid team in the future with your actions right now? In addition to this, how can you use your spells to make life easier for people? Can a hand of protection save someone's life? Can a hand of freedom, a hand of sacrifice, or a hand of purity help someone out? Does someone need your lay on hands? Can an enemy be stunned to make life easier for everyone? Can you cleanse something? Can something be CC'd using Turn Evil or interrupted using Rebuke? Going beyond just your basic rotation and using all of your spells, all of them, will make you an even better tank and a much more valuable member of a raid team. Because it's very easy to forget that raids are much more than just bosses. Think about all the trash. It might just seem completely irrelevant, but trash can be quite difficult. You as a tank are going to need to be ready for the trash mechanics and how to handle them, and more often than not, you'll have to use lots of abilities. Another important thing to do as a tank, especially when in a raid, is to communicate with your healers. In fact, communicate with everyone. Let them know what the situation is as much as you can without spamming. If a big ability is coming in, let people know how you're handling it. You can use voice communication for this with something like Ventrilo, Mumble, or TeamSpeak, but using add-ons like Rayleigh's Spell Announcer will let people in your raid know when you're using certain cooldowns or spells. Make sure you fiddle with this add-on if you do use it to make sure you don't spam people, because it can be annoying. People won't pay attention if you're constantly spamming them. This extends to your other tank as well. Make sure you constantly communicate with them so you know how you're handling a fight. Who's going to tank what? What will you be doing to react to certain mechanics? Don't ever step on each other's toes because you both try to do the same thing. Chances are there's going to be something for both of you to do, and if both of you try to do one thing, the other thing ain't going to happen, and then people are going to die, which is bad. Next up, think about how you control your character. Try to keybind as many spells as you can, as it is essential that you have your right hand on your mouse. I say this because you use your right hand on your mouse to control your character. Movement is vital as a tank. You need to be able to control things. Controlling your character is a big topic, and I cover it in my Tanking Mentality guide, which I will again put on screen. Click it to open the video in another tab. The information in it will help you significantly. I can't overstate how important movement is, and I don't want to make this video any longer than it already is by repeating myself. The Tanking Mentality guide on screen or in the description covers things like movement in more detail. Movement is vitally important, and you need to know how to move, because otherwise you're going to die, and dying is the worst thing you can do as a tank. More important than anything else in this section though is knowledge. That's why you're here, right? Knowledge. Knowledge of the fights you'll be getting into, when to tank swap, how the damage comes in, where enemies should be positioned, and how mechanics will affect you and everyone else around you. You can learn some of this by reading up on the fights you'll be doing, for instance, but make sure you turn your experience in a raid into knowledge. Watch your raid, mark targets as quickly as you can, and try to help identify problems within the team's strategy by watching it play out. You're in a great position as a tank to watch your raid work. Aside from just knowing the fights, do your best to constantly learn and adapt your strategy for each fight. It is important that you consider how damage will be coming in and create for yourself a strategy for each fight, so that you don't die, the boss dies. Now, time to speak of some advanced techniques. This is for paladins who know their class well, and who may be trying to squeeze more out of it. There are lots of little things that you can do to help be more awesome as a Protection Paladin, so let's go over a few of my suggestions. First of all, use potions. Really, just use potions. Remember that Resolve affects all of your self-healing, including healing tonics. And yes, while health stones are very convenient, they also share a cooldown with healing tonics, and healing tonics are stronger. They are made with first aid and a little bit of fishing. You can just get the stuff off of the auction house if you want to, but definitely consider bringing plenty of them with you into a raid, as they will help you by providing you with a once per fight heal that can be very significant. It's practically a cooldown. Next up, your talents. They are pretty versatile. Consider swapping certain talents in and out between fights. If you need to constantly move out of bad stuff, then Pursuit of Justice can be quite good. If you need an AoE interrupt, then Blinding Light can work well if the enemies are susceptible to disorient. Clemency turns you into a raid-supporting machine, allowing you to use your hands way more often. And most importantly, consider using Empowered Seals if you are confident in your skills. As of patch 6.1, this talent has become much more viable, as you can now maintain the 2 buffs it offers constantly. I've been talking about seal twisting practically since the beginning of the video, so let's get it out of the way. When it comes to seal twisting, make sure you consider your situation. Your general rotation might be to activate Seal of Righteousness, Judge, immediately switch to Seal of Insight, Judge when it's next off of cooldown, and then remain in Insight until Liadrin's Righteousness is about to fade. Whereupon you repeat this process. Go into Seal of Righteousness, Judge, immediately switch back to Seal of Insight, continue your rotation, Judge, and then wait until Liadrin's Righteousness is about to fade. But consider that if you're not tanking a boss and you're not taking damage, which is possible, then you won't be needing Seal of Insight for a while. Consider staying in Seal of Righteousness for the extra damage while you're waiting on your turn to tank. Just remember, don't do this if you're still taking damage while not tanking. There are multiple bosses where both tanks are constantly taking damage, like the Butcher or Kromog, so make sure you judge the situation you're in before you do this. Most importantly, if you intend to seal twist, make sure you practice it. You need to make it muscle memory in addition to your rotation, and the 2 of them together can be quite complicated. Make sure you have a good way to track the buffs you receive, weak auras helps a lot here, and try and maintain a 100% uptime on them. Practice, practice, practice. Find all the little kinks in your rotation and iron them out as much as you can. Next up is Divine Shield. Although this is a quick way to destroy your threat and get someone killed, there is a neat trick you can pull off if you need to use Divine Shield to survive a huge attack or remove a debuff while still tanking. Start by taunting. This applies a 3-second debuff to an enemy that forces them to attack you. During this 3-second period, they will continue to attack you, even through a Divine Shield. So, you have a 3-second window with which to activate and then remove your Divine Shield, preferably with a CancelAura macro. With good timing, this can turn Divine Shield from a useless spell to a really powerful means with which to survive an ability or remove a nasty debuff. Next up, let's discuss pooling Holy Power. Since you have 5 Holy Power to play with and your main spenders only cost 3, you can pool Holy Power up. You should consider what this means. It means that you can cast 2 survivability cooldowns back to back in quick succession. And by considering what the damage is like, you can actually hold off using a Shield of the Righteous to generate more Holy Power. One technique I like to use is, if I'm not taking too much damage, if everything's under control, to pull 5 Holy Power, and then when my next Holy Power generator is available, use Shield of the Righteous, followed by the generator. This means that I don't ever waste Holy Power, and gets me right back up to 3, in case I need to use another spender to help survive. If I'm still taking minimal damage, I repeat the process, only dumping all of my Holy Power if I'm in danger. Next, Shield of the Righteous itself. This is a 3-second long buff that reduces the physical damage you take by 25%. If you cast Shield of the Righteous while this buff is already on, it will just extend the duration, so you can't waste it. You should try to keep this buff up on you as much as possible, as a damage reduction like this is nothing to be shirked at. Just remember though that it only reduces physical damage, not magic damage. So if you're taking mostly magic damage in a fight, consider using Word of Glory more. Admittedly, this situation is not going to happen much, if at all, but remember that it exists. Additionally, remember to track your Bastion of Glory so that you can consume a 5-stack as much as possible using your Word of Glory. Don't let the stacks go to waste. One neat trick, actually, is you can actually see how many stacks of Bastion of Glory you have on the button of Word of Glory. You can see it has a number next to it, at least if you're using the default bars. Next up, remember your immunity abilities. Hand of Protection can save someone's life if they're knocked up by, say, Kromog. This spell is remarkably powerful and can make any encounter easier. Experiment with it, and try to figure out how to best use it at all times. Don't let your utility spells go unused when they could help people out. In some cases, an immunity can do more than save a person's life. It can make a whole encounter easier. Okay, to wrap things up, let's discuss your main goal. Your main goal as a Protection Paladin. Your goal, in the entirety of every single raid you're in, is to be a raider. That means going beyond your role as a tank and doing everything you can to help a raid team succeed. Tank enemies, yes, but also consider how you can use your utilitarian spells. Help the team figure out fights. Be the guy on voice chat who knows what to do, even for roles that aren't his own, who can offer advice to people, who can identify problems. Be the guy who people turn to for advice. Be the member of the raid team that supports everyone, and get yourself into a situation where if you're not in the raid team, the team is weaker because of it. And one last piece of advice. Don't worry about the DPS meters. You're not a DPSer, you're a tank. Focus on your job, stay alive, and remember that you're not a damage dealer. You're a tank. Your role is to control the situation so that the DPSs can do their job and kill the boss. Keep your raid team safe so that they can help you succeed. Finally, above everything else I have said, enjoy yourself. Tanking is stressful, yes, but it's also one of the most rewarding roles in World of Warcraft. And of course, you are in a game. Master it if you can, but always, always try to enjoy yourself. Surround yourself with people that you like to raid with, who will listen to your terrible jokes, who will chat and laugh with you throughout the evening. Enjoy all of your awesome abilities. Enjoy charging headfirst into the biggest and baddest bosses of the game, because remember that one day, you're going to be tanking the end boss of this expansion. You are going to be going one-on-one with a guy while your raid kills him. Help your team in as many ways as you can, and most importantly, above everything else, enjoy your time in the World of Warcraft. That's it for this guide. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it helpful. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, or feedback, you can contact me using the links in the description, or you can just leave a comment. With any luck, we can attract some experienced paladins to this video, and they can help identify any mistakes I've made, and we can edit things to help make this guide the best that it can be. And of course, hopefully, we can also answer any questions you have. As always, I offer my heartfelt thanks to my patrons who help videos like this exist. You can find out more information about this in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck as the protective knight of justice and honor.